Hi, I'm Attorney General Brian Frosh, and I'm here today with Zenita Hurley. She is the chief of our office's Civil Rights Division, and we're here to talk about her work as chair of the Sexual Assault Evidence Kit Policy and Funding Committee. These evidence kits are also referred to as SAKE kits and the SAKE Committee. So, Zenita, let's start with some basic information. What is a sexual assault evidence kit?
Great question. Sexual assault evidence kit, or SAKE for shorthand, generally refers to a kit that's used to collect important evidence such as DNA evidence from a person after they have been the victim of a sexual assault. And those kits are then sent to labs for testing, which can help identify the perpetrator of the assault, as well as provide evidence that a crime has been committed.
So, Zenita, a few years ago, our office did a survey of all of the untested sexual assault evidence kits statewide. Can you tell us what the results of that survey were and what happened?
Sure. So as a result of our survey, what we found is that there were actually thousands of untested SAKEs throughout Maryland. And unlike what is traditionally considered a backlog of untested kits, these were kits that were sitting on shelves, not because there were a lack of resources to test them, but rather that agencies had varying policies in terms of which kits should be tested. And they unfortunately were inconsistent across different jurisdictions. And so what we recommended when we published our report on the number of untested kits throughout Maryland is that there be an oversight committee created, and that committee evaluate and develop recommendations to ensure that kits would be uniformly tested throughout the state.
That's great. And the legislation set up the Sexual Assault Evidence Kit Committee that you chair. Can you tell us what that committee is about?
So I mentioned that we found that there were inconsistent policies across the state and how SAKEs were handled, and that there be some consistency brought to bear. And one of our specific recommendations was the creation of an oversight group. And the SAKE committee was thus formed by the legislature in 2017. Our primary responsibility is to create consistent statewide policies for the handling of SAKEs. And our members include law enforcement, medical professionals, victim rights attorneys, victim advocates, and prosecutors.
So can you tell us about some of the most recent achievements of this committee?
Sure. So our biggest achievement is definitely the statewide mandate to test that ensures that every kit, or nearly every kit, where the victim wants the kit to be tested will be tested. More recently, I'd like to highlight 3 accomplishments we've achieved within the past few months. First, we pushed for a new law that will ensure that healthcare providers are reimbursed by the state for services provided to victims up to 15 days after the sexual assault occurred. Currently, and a lot of people may not know this, but medical personnel are only reimbursed if evidence is collected within 5 days of the assault. However, recent advancements in science have extended the window that DNA can be collected to at least 9 days after the assault, and potentially up into a victim's next menstrual cycle. And so the new law will ensure that the state's reimbursement policy reflects current science and will also expand victims' access to safe exams. Second, we also supported a law that will prohibit law enforcement agencies from presenting sexual assault victims with forms asking them to waive their rights. And we have called these forms waiver of right forms, and they seek to relieve a law enforcement agency of its obligation to investigate a complaint of sexual assault. Waiver of right forms are particularly problematic during the beginning stages of the investigation. Individuals who experience sexual violence may struggle with decision-making due to the effects of trauma. Having to make these crucial decisions concerning assault may be premature and could re-traumatize the victim, but even after the initial stages of the investigation, use of these forms is discouraged because the forms may contain language that can send the message that law enforcement simply wants to close the case without providing justice to the victim. And so, effective October 1 of this year, law enforcement will be prohibited from presenting these forms to victims of sexual assault. So we're really proud of that achievement. Finally, in terms of recent policies, we are excited that we issued a final regulation that gives victims the right to request an independent review or a second opinion of any law enforcement agency decision not to test a SAKE. And this is particularly helpful when when a sexual assault evidence kit is designated as unfounded, because some of you may understand that that determination has in the past been misused. And so moving forward, if essentially effective May 4th, victims have the ability, anytime a law enforcement agency designates a case as unfounded or otherwise that it shouldn't be tested, that they could seek this second opinion by an independent body.
Zenita, thank you for the great work that you're doing. We really are protecting victims of sexual assaults by making these kits available and performing the tests instead of just putting them on a shelf somewhere. So really appreciate your great work. If anyone has questions, they can get in touch with you via email at zhurley, ZHURLEY, at oag.state.md.us. Thanks a million.
Thank you.